Greetings, the parents, and a warm welcome to the Readers Are Ours Challenge. In the past few days, I have been sharing with you the different scripts talking about why is it difficult to teach the children how to read, simply because of the methods that are used in schools are incorrect and redundant and outdated because the school still uses the old system, which is basically a method of memory and sight word or the whole language method that is used in the schools. And examples or a few examples will be given to you as we go about this workshop. And this is basically a pre-video to our workshop as we are preparing for our upcoming 3-day workshop. This is basically to say, let's get ready, let's prepare ourselves to be educated and upskill ourselves in how we can teach our children to read, and this starting from an early age of 2 years old, and even if you're an adult struggling to read, all the way up to 60 years old. Ladies and gentlemen, parents and teachers, my name is Teacher Princess. I am a Nia teacher. I teach Nia dance arts, healing arts, and yoga. I have worked with a variety of schools, especially local schools or local township schools. And during this process, I realized that the children that we are working with, especially within our township schools, were struggling a lot when it comes to reading. And it became very important to me to really recognize the need for children to start learning to read from an early age, especially before they start grade 1. So how are we going to do this? Well, I am going to be holding your hand step-by-step methods in which you can be able to practice every day for at least 15 minutes by using the techniques and following the methods and instructions that I will be sharing with you on this program. I am going to tell you a little bit about myself and my reading journey, or how I started to learn how to read. I was very fortunate in that growing up I had an active parenthood in which my grandparents, that being my grandmothers, both from my mother and my father's side, were very intentional, I could say, about the ideas that they had about how they wanted to see me come up, I could say. As a result, they introduced a number of different things that would then be very stimulating to me mentally. And the introduction of books was one of them. I remember on a term basis, I used to get book supplies. I unfortunately cannot remember from where they were coming from, but I remember that on a term basis, I used to look forward to getting these books. It would be 3 books at a time that would be sent to me, and I would get them from the post box. So this was always really exciting because I would get them myself and I knew that these books were for me. Now, starting to read these books, as a young child or as a young girl, I did not necessarily know how to read immediately, right? But I started perusing the contents of this book. So I started looking at the cover and I started familiarizing myself with the cover, the book texture, and how it felt in my hands. And that was really exciting for me. And then I would go through the different pages and page through the different pages to see what was happening in there. And really, that's how it began. I used to learn from the illustrations that were in the story, and I could kind of tell you from my own imagination, from what I could grasp at that time, what the whole story was about. And it turned out that in the end, a lot of the times I was right. And as time went by, I was introduced to phonics and sounds. I remember one of my first words that I learned to spell was the word national. National. Because the man who raised me, my Ra, he used to work at an appliance store. I think it used to be called Panasonic Techniques company, but I think the company was called Panasonic, where they sold these different appliances, your national appliances, your Panasonic, your Techniques. So we had those appliances in the house. And as a result, they would be reading those signs to me. I would be asking, what is this word? And they would say Panasonic. And I would say Panasonic. And then my Ra would show me Pe, Ne, So, Nick. Right? So from that time, I basically learned how to dissect the words into syllables, right? Into syllables. And I had my aunt who then introduced Afrikaans books to me. And because I had already kind of started getting into the pattern of reading in phonics and syllables, she then one day challenged me to read an Afrikaans book, because it became such a pattern that even at home they would make me read newspapers for friends and family members that would be visiting. And it would be such a spectacle because I would just be reading re, a, de, I, ng. That's how I would be reading in phonics sound. Right? And they would say, no, but she's getting there. She's getting there. She can read. Right? So one day my aunt challenged me to read an Afrikaans book. And I was so intimidated. I was just like, no, but I can't read Afrikaans. And she said, no, read. You can read. You can read sounds. So if you can read sounds, just read those letters as they are. Because Afrikaans is a sound words. Just read. And so I just started reading Afrikaans. Even though I did not understand it, I had never read it before, but because I had learned the basics of sound, of phonemics, it was easy for me to read Afrikaans. So, as time went by and I became a parent, when my daughter was about 4 years old, right, I had actually started introducing reading to the children, or to my daughter while she was still a baby. I used to read storybook hour times to her before bedtimes, and that became our pattern. So when she was around 3 and 4, we used to read the storybook together. Right? But basically what I had been doing is that I had kind of started that same initiation process of teaching her or introducing her to the sound patterns. So we had this particular book that we used to enjoy reading together. And one day, as we were just reading, she just said to me, wait, let me read to you. And I was so stunned that I said, no, what are you going to read? But let me tell you, by this time already, she could already spell words. For instance, she would be looking at her medicine, or she used to look at her medicines, and she used to also love reading her medicines. So I remember the Panado container, she would also read that and go P-A-N-A-D-O. Panado. Slurry. So that's how she would read Panado. She could spell it, but she would then read it according to how she understood gore ke setlhare, right? Because we spoke Lulemi at home, we maintained that we speak the Setswana language. That's our language. So at home we speak Lulemi, and we will teach the children how to read phonics and sound and letters, because English is a letter or an alphabet language that makes the use of sounds to create a word, right? So some of these things that I will be saying and sharing here will kind of be repetitive, because sometimes when you've never really heard of something before and you're hearing about it for the first time, you want to hear it more than once so that it starts making sense to you. And hence I was making the example earlier that I was reading in phonics. I was r, a, d, e, ng, reading. Right? So that's how it all started. And that's really what we wish for the children or for the child, to first recognize that these letters are actually sounds. These sounds are the very same basic that gives us a word, because when we follow the sound, we are creating the word. Right? Does that make sense to you? I hope that makes sense to you, because that's where it's going to begin. So that's really how it started, that she was spelling Panado, because as we were also learning the process of sound, we also introduced these mini charts. If you see these game charts, these mini toys that you can also get for children, especially when you are intentional about how you want your children to learn. One of the things that you are going to introduce is how is basically to introduce them to educational toys. So you will buy them toys that have maybe a car that is a singing car, and it has all these songs that they can learn. Twinkle, twinkle, little star, how I wonder what you are, and they can start drawing the star and understanding that a star, what it is, what it looks like, shapes, things like that. You can take them out at night, show them the stars at night, and that the stars shine. A star twinkling very far. And that also begins to be one of the very first words that they start to learn. A star. How do you spell a star? And then you start taking them through that process. But you would have already taken them through the letters of the alphabets in phonic sound. A, B, K, D, E, F, G, H. Just like that. And on that very same chart I spoke about earlier, where you found the A to Z letters, that's when you'll kind of explain to them that here is our letters, and the English letter has the English language has alphabet letters. And these alphabet letters, when we say them, this is how we will say them. A, B, C, D, E, right? So that's why she could already spell in that way, Panado. However, because we had already been doing phonics before we introduced the alphabets, she already understood the difference between the two, just automatically, because that is something that will happen automatically when you start spending these 15-minute periods to explain to your child that there are alphabets and there are sounds, but these are actually the same things. It's just that The English language makes a use of alphabets, but these alphabets are actually sounds, which when we read, it will make it easier for us to understand that these very same alphabets are also said differently in phonics, or when we're using them as phonics, then we understand that to read, we need to understand the sounds of the alphabets. So these alphabets have their very own sounds, even though they are the same thing. But when we are speaking of them alphabetically, we will pronounce them in alphabetical senses. But when we pronounce them phonemically, we will then pronounce them using their sound. Right. Yes. So I'm hoping that this is clear, and I'm hoping that this is also giving you an idea and an indication. So just sharing a little bit about the story when I started reading, how I was introduced into reading, and how also as I got older and I started having my children as well, how I also started initiating them into reading. The very first thing was introducing books in their lives. That's the main important thing. I understand that today we will not really find books in our households for children, but we still have libraries, and to actually touch and page through a book, that is such an exciting thing. And that's one of the cultures that we should preserve as a nation, especially as Batu, because our children cannot read. And if we look around and we are watching what is happening out there, it is really heartbreaking, because even in our schools, you'll find that the school system will mark the child right, even though there's a letter or two that are missing in the word. They will say, just as long as it looks like it's right, we can mark it. So I am begging and I am pleading with you, my parents. I am pleading and asking with you, teachers, that we tackle this reading matter in a more different route, and that we make it more interesting and more engaging for the children, so that they are not only repeating word sounds, they are not only memorizing the word as a whole, but they actually are beginning to understand that actually this word that I am reading is a sound. And if I can connect these sounds together, they will give me the word that I meant to read. And if I can read this with that understanding, it means that for my upcoming tests and so forth, I will be a better reader, I will be a champion reader, and I will be a leader reader. And if we can emphasize the importance of reading, because that also stimulates our minds and our brains, it allows us to travel and to go into spaces, into places that we could never really be in the moment. Within that moment when we are reading, we allow ourselves to kind of teleport into those spaces and into those places. So that is beautiful also for building the child's imagination. Imagination is a very beautiful thing. It allows us to visualize. It allows us to create a beautiful future within us, within our existence, because from books we can read the many possibilities that are available to our children. Children can learn about farming. Children can learn about the technical, the digital world. They can learn about yarning, how to yarn, how to crochet, how to put things together, how to heal, how to upskill oneself, how to be happy, how to dance. There are so many how-tos. I could go on and on and on that we could be reading from the books, and we want our children to start learning these many concepts that are available to them. But another important factor is that our children will not be able to do this without us, the parents, holding them by the hand and showing them that this is how we pronounce this. S for snake. And it is also a shape of a snake. And it also the sound of a snake, because the snake slithers. I love that. I just love that about sounds, because they are so obvious. But we never see it like this because we were never taught these very basics, that this is how it works. So my daughter, just taking you back to when we were talking about when she started reading, then took the book from my hands and she started reading. And I was stunned. I was proud. I was so happy. And so we practiced more of her reading, more and more and more. And also reading builds vocabulary. It means that we will have more words under our belts. It means that our children will have more words apart from just nice. You know, somebody asks you something, how is it? It's nice. You know, you talking about food. How's your food? The food is nice. How's your outfit? Your outfit is nice. It means our vocabulary is limited because we did not read enough. We are not reading enough. And we have to read more so we can learn more, so we can change our world, the world around us. Right? So as time went by and daughter was reading, I invited her to one of my preschool events where I was going to be talking to parents about reading. And I was saying, parents, all our children are genius children. All children, they can read if we can only follow certain steps and processes and methods and proven systems. Then we will all be able to help our children to become champion readers. And even you, the parent there at home, you will also be able to become the champion teacher for your child by only spending 15 minutes of your time. You know, you can do this even after work while you are preparing your meal, you are peeling vegetables. You know how curious these children are. They will come and ask you, Mommy, what are you making? You can tell them, I'm making carrots. I'm peeling carrots. They'll ask you, carrots? What is that? You'll tell them, carrots ke digwete. Digwete ke carrots. Kapa carrot ke segwete. Segwete ke carrot. And then the children will know. And then you can ask them, what color is this carrot? And they can say, this carrot is orange. Orange. Do you want to taste the carrot? Do you know how it tastes? And they can taste the carrot and tell you the carrot tastes sweet. Okay? And then you'll say, yes, the carrot tastes sweet. It doesn't taste sour. It tastes sweet. It doesn't taste bitter. It tastes sweet. It doesn't taste sour. It tastes sweet. Yeah? And then they know that's how a sweet tastes like. Yeah? I love this. And that's how we just slowly but surely, gradually get into being present as parents and just flowing into the flow of things without feeling like, but sometimes you do have to sit down and go through these things with them just for 10, 15 minutes. You do have to sit down and then listen to them telling you their story, sharing that story with you that they would have read for you. In 2020, also when my son was born, when he was 5 years old, he was also going through the very same basics that his sister had gone through. So we had taken him strictly through the phonics system. And it was even nicer this time because now my daughter, who was older, was also helping me out, helping him reading to him. So this also created that bonding, that nice bonding session. I said nice. That awesome, peaceful, beautiful, amazing bonding time with them. And this was exciting for me to watch because this was a culture that we were very intentional in creating. And I'm sure that even those who had also taken me through the journey of growth, my grandparents, my aunts, my all of them, they were also preparing me for this journey of ensuring that I will also create this culture for my children one day. And it's just beautiful to watch. So also in 2020, my son, he was only 6 years old. In fact, I think he was 5 going on 6. He would be turning 6 in April, right? And he had written a 2020, the pandemic piece about what was the pandemic called, Batung, the 2020 COVID-19, the pandemic, because we were at home and we were homeschooling at that time, and there was an assignment for the children to write about 2020, what they think about it. He was only 5 years old. He was able to write his own story. Yes, surely some words here and there were spelled incorrectly, but because he already had an understanding of the language from reading, he could write down his own story. He could write down his own story and be able to share it with us. And he was reading it out loud for his school project. So this was really incredible. So on that note, I would like to really just encourage you, parents and teachers, that we prepare ourselves for this upcoming 3-day workshop in which we are going to learn all the basic methods of teaching our children to become champion readers by age 2, or from the ages of 2 years old, while they are still grasping all these new things that they are learning on the daily. I really hope that this pre-introduction video was useful for you. I hope it fueled your energies to get started, and I hope you are ready to work. I will definitely be supporting you all the way through, and we will also be undertaking an ongoing online book club that will be Zoom based for the children. So bit by bit, I hope you also engaging them, letting them know that something is happening, something is coming up, and they can prepare to get ready to read, because readers are leaders and reading is fun. Also, before I go, I wanted to also just let you know that there are platforms that can allow us to read online. There are audiobooks that we can also be able to download or be able to read online. If anyone is interested at such platforms, I can share those details and you can have a look on the links once I've shared them. And also, I also would like to please encourage the parents, if we can really get used to making use of our libraries. The schools have libraries, in the township schools have libraries that are not in use. When I found this out, this really broke my heart. I literally broke down. because I could not understand why it is that we have libraries in our schools, but they are not in use. Let us start making a use of our libraries. Baholo, I ask, I plead, I beg, Jwe. Reading is fun. Reading empowers our minds and creates a magical world for us. Readers are leaders, and Africa needs its leaders, especially right now in this time. Matla, Yaruna. Let us take this in our own hands, because the children are the future and they depend on us. While we are still here, let us help them create a better tomorrow for themselves. Thank you, parents. See you soon.